Let me introduce myself. My name is Ilana. I work at R. Michelson Galleries. I am that friendly face that you see when you first walk into the door. And I am joined today by one of my favorite, all-time favorite illustrators. Her books, let's see, I believe she's illustrated, I want to say 48 books or so. They have won, 5 New York Times Best Book Awards, New York Times Notable Book Citation, a Boston Globe Horn Book Award, 2 Time Magazine Best Books. She's been on the New York Public Library 100 recommended books, I think 8 times, if that's correct. She's the recipient of a Golden Kite Award, 2 Parents' Choice Awards, and an ALA Notable Book Award, and that's just to name a few. Miss Barbara McClintock, welcome to our live stream. How are ya?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. It's just so nice to be here and for all of you to let me into your house. I might not, you're so brave. Who knows what could happen?
Well, that's going to be the joy of doing this live. And I have to thank you for being my very, very, very first in a new series called One-on-One Live at 2. And in this series, what I hope to do is connect all of our viewers and those who love children's illustration with some of your favorite illustrators and authors. I think in a time like this, the best we can do is stay connected. And what I wanted to do was give everyone an opportunity. So thank you, Barbara, for joining us. And what we're going to do, I have been collecting all of your questions for the last week, and I'm going to run through them and ask Miss Barbara. And if you did not get your question in on time, have no fear. Because this is live, feel free to comment in that section, and we will try to get to everyone's question as soon as we can within the interview. I also want to mention very quickly that part of this series, Barbara has been kind enough, and I believe she's working on it now, so stay tuned to the very end because we will get a little glimpse. What we would like to do is every illustrator who is kind enough to join me in these talks will be doing a little quick doodle for this session specifically. The drawing will then be available at the gallery, and a portion of those proceeds will be donated to the Sendak Foundation. Picture book illustrators, picture book authors are experiencing financial hardship due to this crisis and this virus and a major loss of income, and they are being impacted. So the Maurice Sendak Emergency Relief Fund has teamed up with the New York Foundation for the Arts. And what they are doing is they are distributing grants, I believe up to $2,500 to various illustrators and authors who are being impacted and affected. So at the very end of this broadcast, please stay tuned to check out whatever Barbara's been producing. I know it will be magical. And before we get to the questions, I did want to let you know Barbara, whenever I see her in the gallery, is always one of my personal fashion icons. Whenever she comes in, she has some beautiful piece of jewelry or some funky little outfit on. And Barbara, I just wanted to make sure you saw how carefully I prepared my outfit today, just to make sure. I chose it specifically for you.
Excellent, thank you. I recognize that little girl.
Do you recognize that? Yeah. For those who do not know, this t-shirt is part of one of Barbara's newest books called Vroom, which you will actually see somewhere behind me. And I just wanted, Barbara, you to know that I dressed very specifically for the occasion.
Well, you look smashing, as
always. Thank you. Well, let's get to some questions. Now, like I said before, a lot of these questions have been emailed to me from various people. throughout the week, but please do comment, and we'll try to get extra questions in. Or if you just want to say something to Barbara directly, now is your chance. So our very first question is from Rose. Barbara, when did you first get interested in illustrating books? Did you go to art school, or are you self-taught?
Well, I got very interested in doing books, I think, from the time I was very, very small. In fact, I've drawn my whole life, and the very first drawing I remember making is from when I was 3 years old. I think my mom and my sister may be listening in. So hi, Mom. Hi, Kathleen. If you're listening.
Are they in North Dakota? Is that it?
North Dakota. So they both remember me drawing from a very, very early age. And I actually started drawing comic strips and comic books when I was probably 4, 5, 6 years old. So I think I just was a natural storyteller. I loved telling stories. My mom read a lot to my older sister and me. Hi again, Mom and Kathleen. And so I just sort of had a narrative bump, and every drawing I made had to tell a story. All the characters were dancing or laughing or doing something, telling a story of some sort. And I loved comic books. I loved cartoons. So I would go, after I'd sit in front of the TV on Saturday mornings with a big stack of copier paper and draw all the cartoon characters I was watching as the show was going on. And then I'd take some of that information and those characters and make comic books out of them, continue the stories and draw them on my own. So I've been making books for, a very, very long time. And as far as did I go to art school, the answer to that question is no, because speaking of the Sendak Foundation, when I was in college in North Dakota, I knew that I wanted to write and illustrate picture books, but I had no idea how to go about doing it. And this is a long time ago. So back in that day and age, there weren't classes, certainly not at the college where I was, having to do with children's literature or how to write and illustrate children's books. So I loved the work of Marie Sendak. And I had my wonderful art professor at college said, I said, I'd love to write to him and ask him information about how to write and illustrate children's books. And he said, well, he'll be too busy if you write to him to answer probably. So why don't you just call him? So that's exactly what I did. I called Ridgefield, Connecticut Information, got his phone number. This is how long ago this was, and dialed his number. And I thought, how bad could this be? He'll either be really nice and he'll answer my questions or he'll hang up. So it's like nothing to worry about. So I called and he picked up the phone and answered. And he was wonderful. He talked to me for 20 minutes. He told me how I could go about building a portfolio and making a dummy book. He recommended that I move to New York City. And I asked him, gosh, should I go to art school? And he said, absolutely not. Don't junk in your head. It will take you 10 years to get rid of it. So I thought, oh, okay, I won't go to art school. So on his suggestion, I moved to New York City. And I educated myself by checking books out of public libraries. And I check out a book about the drawings of Albrecht Dürer, bring them home, copy all of the drawings or most of the drawings in a book. And when I was done with that book, I'd bring it back to the library and then I'd check out a book about, Albrecht Dürer or somebody else and copy and copy and copy. And when I moved to New York, I was also able to go to museums and look at drawings in museum collections and draw those as well. So you absolutely can teach yourself how to draw. You don't need to go to art school. I think art school is a huge help. Definitely, you feel like you have people are also working along with you and you can make contacts. But if you're really dedicated, if you really work hard, if you're very passionate about what you do, you can teach yourself. And I'm living proof of that.
You certainly are.
But even if you do go to art school, you have to have that passion and drive
Yeah.
to really make it in the field. So, but yeah, it's a great life. I love it.
Well, we had several questions just on your the journey and how you really got here. So what I did is I sort of combined several people's questions. We had some people wondering, what was the very first project that you published? And the follow-up that a few people actually wanted to know is, how long were you in this field before you finally considered your career as an illustrator successful? So it's sort of a two-parter.
Okay. Well, after I moved to New York City when I was 19 years old, and I started taking my portfolio around, and it took quite a long time before I actually got a book. So I had saved up money. My grandfather, who was a retired farmer, sent me some money, which was so sweet to keep me going for a while. I mean, it was just, I have a very supportive family, which helps a lot. So finally, I got a book called Potbelly Possums to illustrate for Holiday House. And I started just getting work, odds and ends of work. And finally, after about 2 years of sort of piecing things together and kind of just barely surviving, I met Jim Henson through my former husband, who was working with him. And I started doing illustrating books for Henson Associates. I started illustrating books for the Fraggle Rock series. I don't know how many people remember.
I was a child of the 80s. It was one of my favorites.
So that really gave me financial footing. And I was also doing a lot of textbook illustration at the time, which was also kind of a steady income for me. So really those Fraggle books were what really did it for me. But while I was illustrating the Fraggle books, I was also writing and illustrating my own, or I was also trying to write and illustrate, come up with ideas for my own books. And I created a dummy book based on stories written by a story written by Balzac for the 19th century illustrator Granville, using anthropomorphized animals. That's a whole lot of information, but it was just sort of a very melodramatic tale about a cat who meets the love of her life, and they get married, and then he dumps her, and she gets a revenge by writing her memoirs and making $1 gazillion. So anyway, this book I took around to a lot of different publishers, and it was rejected, and then I sent it out again, and it was rejected. So it was rejected by I think around 15 publishers. And I finally, the 16th publisher I sent it to, David Godine, bought it, published it, and it won my first New York Times Best Books of the Year award. So that was like a yay.
Big yay.
So big yay. Set it off. But it's just, you just have to keep at it, and rejection is just part of being involved in this career, in this process.
That's wonderful advice. And to sort of segue a little bit, so you, as I mentioned before, you've illustrated, I think 48 books, and some of those have been by other authors. But you yourself are also an author, and as I mentioned with the t-shirt, Vroom, for instance, you were both the author and the illustrator.
Yes.
Do you find it easier to illustrate for your own writing, or do you find the process to be sort of similar in terms of creating when you are doing both?
That's an excellent question. I think whatever manuscript I'm illustrating, I approach it with the idea that I'm going to express the writing in a visual way. And that way may be something very elaborate and detailed. It might be something just bold and simple. I think when I get a text, it's challenging to get a text from an author, and quite exciting, frankly, because it's a collaboration. It's something, you know, beautiful that's coming out of somebody else's head. And it's a real honor to be entrusted with somebody else's, you know, brilliance and creation, and try to express what they're doing in writing in a visual, kind of frame it in a visual context. So a lot of people think that, and I'm kind of moving around a little bit in this question, but a lot of people think that if you write something, you have to find your own illustrator to illustrate it. And that is absolutely not true, unless, excuse me, you are probably pretty well known, or you're married to somebody who's an illustrator or whatever. There are certain circumstances where that works, but by and large, it's you, when you submit a manuscript and it's bought in by a publishing house, the editor and the art director select an artist, an illustrator, who they think meshes really well with the manuscript. So also books are definitely a team activity. It's not just that I'm sitting here in my studio, which I'm sitting in here, right? This is my studio. Hi folks, I'm coming to you live. But you know, the author and the illustrator work really, really closely with an editor and with an art director, and everybody kind of blends in their feeling about the text, their feeling about how they want it to look. They shape and mold a book, and it's a wonderful process. I've been very fortunate to work with some pretty brilliant editors and art directors over the arc of my career, and it's just gratifying. I just love it. It's a great process. But going back to this whole thing of like somebody else's project or text that they've written, and one's own project and text. I think when I do my own writing, there is an authenticity about it. I have to find myself in any text. If somebody else has written it, I try to find my way of linking to it and linking into it. And usually it's through personal experience that I've had that the text kind of brings out of me. So when I'm also writing it myself, in some ways it's almost more challenging because it's more open. So I have a free-ranging kind of thing. If you, for example, working with creating Vroom, my editor Simon Boughton came up to visit me and in my studio, and he looked out in, you know, the driveway, and he saw my Audi TT sports car, and he said, "That's it. I want you to write and illustrate a story for me about a little girl in a sports car." And it was like, yes, of course, that sounds great. I would love to do that. So after the initial like enthusiasm sort of died down, I thought, oh, okay, so I have to come up with a story. I have to structure this and build a framework around it. So that process was a very interesting journey. And I had to think about, was I going to do a little girl in a real car? Was I going to do her in a toy car? And through trial and error, I decided to use a toy car. And in fact, can I take you around the studio a little bit? Just
please do.
Okay, and this is, you know, again, I know that these are specific questions, but I love to ramble like off-road a lot. So this is what we're going to do.
And so, we love the inside special tour of your studio. So
okay, great. So so this little car was a gift to me, I believe, by my dad, but mom probably had something to do with it too. And I loved this. I played with this a lot. And I thought, well, it would be really, really cool to have Annie, my little character, appear in this car. So another thing I do to kind of get story ideas going is I make little paper cutouts of the characters. that I can prop up and move around, and they can talk, and I can move them around. I'm just repeating myself, sorry. And I can have them like walking up to the car. Here's little Annie. She walks up to the car, she hops in, she drives around. So I play a lot to get ideas. In fact, I think a really important element of writing and illustrating a book is to be very, very playful. Just go into a realm where you're just doing this. Channel your inner like 5-year-old, you know, with a toy car or whatever it is you're doing, and don't feel self-conscious about it. Just do it. And if you start feeling a little backed up on something, just walk away from it, go back, you know, have a cup of coffee, take a walk, go back to your playful place, and then keep working with, you know, keep getting back into that zone of play. So I thought, okay, I've got the car, I've got the little girl, but what's going to happen next? So you need a framework for a story. And I get ideas from other books that I've read. I get ideas from movies, from, you know, all kinds of, you know, various sources, remember stories that from my childhood. And Frank Viva's Along the Long Road was a big inspiration for me. Of the many, many books that I started reading about cars and race car drivers and everything to do with cars. And I loved it because it was really a story about just starting out in the morning from one spot and riding, in the case of Along the Long Road, on a bike, and going through the countryside and going through a little town and going through a city and through under, you know, tunnels and over bridges. And finally you wind up in the evening back where you started. And I liked that. I thought that's the structure of the house of the story that I want to build. So I started working with different kinds of drawings about where Annie would travel. I drew little maps. I did all kinds of, really got involved and engaged in what the story was going to be about. I tried to find a voice that would be kind of simple and very straightforward for the book, for the writing. And again, you know, lots and lots of reading, I think. And then finally I came up with the visual narrative and went back and forth a lot with Simon Boughton to try to develop it and build it. And finally it was just there, and Simon gave me the thumbs up. So I did the sketches and the finished artwork. And as I used to say long ago and far away, Bob's your uncle. So it was done. And yeah, and it was just a delight that the book got such a wonderful response. I mean, when you do a book, you just never know. It's like sending your kid off to college. What happens? Right. Are they gonna like just sit around in their dorm room and do, you know, who knows what things.
Right. And this one got international, really international attention. I remember we were talking about a few projects over in Asia. And I would mention right now to everyone that if you'd like to go see the available work from Vroom, and also from really most of Barbara's books, or at least what's still available, just head over to our website, which is rmichelson.com, and you can see most of the illustrations that we are talking about in this interview. And Barbara, what I would like to do is I'd like to also ask you, given that we were just allowed a little insider peek and tour into your studio, you have a beautiful home that you often share on your own social media. And I have a question from Megan. She was wondering, what do you think is needed to cultivate a space that nurtures creativity? Is it important for you to have a dedicated space for ideas and for experiments to grow? So if you could talk a little bit about how space plays into your sense of creativity and development.
Okay, well that's a really big topic right now, because you know, all of us
as we're at home
in our spaces, and some spaces have a little more room than others.
Yes.
But I think that, and certainly throughout much of my career, I was working in small spaces. When I was starting out, I was working in my bedroom, or, in a lot of, that's pretty typical of people at various stages of their career, in the beginning of their career.
Especially in New York.
Yes, and absolutely. I think that for me, it's important for me to have elements of books or objects or things that inspire me, and things that kind of that I like, that I just enjoy. And I'm going to take you around the studio again. We're going to have another studio tour. And you can start developing, I mean, it's almost a little scary. You can collect a few things. And as long as, you have some things that you can look at that you really like, you can just maybe have a few things like on a window ledge or something that really inspire you. This is a cupboard that I have, and I've got really cool stuff in here. This is that I keep in my cupboard because I have 4 cats and I don't want them like wrecking my stuff. So we have.
Stay tuned for one of Barbara's newest books if you like cats. Just a little. Tip.
Yes, exactly. So this is, I have cameras. I have,
Oh, Barbara, I think we're losing your audio just ever so slightly.
Oh, okay. So
there we go.
Okay, there. So I guess I have to speak right into so these are all kinds of things, and you have stuff that might not directly relate to anything that you're doing, but you just think it's kind of cool. Like this is a Cooper's hawk foot.
Ooh.
That a friend of mine gave me. Isn't that cool?
Oh, that's so cool.
And you can just draw stuff like this, and if it might fit into a book someday in some way. So I have really, kind of some rare books and things in here, and stuff that I'm going to show you. And puppets. I have puppets and just stuff that I like, stuff that helps me identify myself. If I'm kind of stuck in a project and I'm sitting, I can look around my room and just get some inspiration, or at least be amused. Sometimes just being amused is a good thing too. So here's what's on my window ledge: a spiral staircase, and this is actually was hanging in front of my grandparents' farmhouse. And I have this when I was doing artwork for Vroom. That's one of the cars that I used for inspiration. And lots of books, as you can see. I love reading all kinds of stuff. And this is the rest of my studio. This is my cat, Nick, who is being very well behaved right now. Hi, Nick. Say hi.
Hi, Nick.
So yeah, I have to have a dedicated space for my cats to sit around. So anyway, and then everything from, and also I was very inspired by Top Cat, a Hanna-Barbera cartoon character whose show I watched a lot when I was little. And, more cupboards, more stuff. And it's just, so what you have in your environment is important. And again, your space can be very, very small. And if you just have a few things that are meaningful to you in some way, or that would inspire you, or that you just kind of have an odd sense that you like, just an impulsive sense that,
they make you happy.
A Cooper
when push comes to shove,
or something, even though you're not doing a book about a Cooper's hawk, right? In 5 years, do a book about a Cooper's hawk. So definitely having your own space. And I'm fortunate enough at this stage in my career where I can have my own studio, shut the door, nobody comes in unless they're invited, and except the cats, they can come and go pretty freely. And
all of us today.
Yes, and all of you today. So that's really good. So did that, in a convoluted way, answer your question? Very much
so. And I actually have a bit of a follow-up from one of our friends named Michael. He is wondering, sort of touching on that and touching on your creative space and your creative process. He's wondering if you keep a dedicated sketchbook for your just own observations every single day, just your ideas. And his follow-up is, where do your ideas stem from? And I suppose that really does tie into your physical space as well.
Okay, yes, well, I keep the sketchbook question. I have lots of sketchbooks like going on at any given time. So I have like little, some little dogs I was doing for character development for a Hyundai car commercial in South Korea. And I have done, so I'm working on a book right now where I am. And sometimes you can do two different things in a sketchbook. You just turn it over. So one part are car commercials, the other part are farm animals. So I'm illustrating a biography of Randolph Caldecott right now.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
doing lots of drawings of animals because he did these, really spectacular drawings of cows and horses and ducks. And so I don't know if you can see these things or not.
We can just see that, yes.
Yeah, okay, so anyway, you get the picture. There are just lots and lots and lots of sketches that I fill this book up with. But then I carry little sketchbooks like this around in my purse. And I have little drawings. This is just a doodle I was doing when I was coming up with ideas from my book, Nothing Stops Sophie.
Which is directly behind me.
And just little drawings of, if I, children, girls that I might see like sitting in some place as I'm walking around or whatever. And this is, a little character from the Five Forms who is doing various martial arts poses. So I just carry and I just doodle, and this is an address for one of my publishers so that I don't get lost when I'm walking. And so I have got many sketchbooks, and I just fill them up. I just doodle whatever. If I'm reading, Peanuts cartoons, I'll just start sketching ideas, of little characters of my own that might have some connection to what my interpretation of Charlie Brown and Lucy and all of those characters are. And it just goes on. And then I also, this is a lined book, and I have, I keep notes for story ideas as well. So it goes back and forth from writing, just and doodling, but I've got, there are sketchbooks over here. Okay, so now I'll take you on a little sketchbook tour. So these are just, so these are some sketchbooks that are just propped up here. I have a sketchbook drawer that is full of sketchbooks down here. So let's see.
This is so much fun to have such an inside view and this access.
Well,
thank you for sharing all of this with us.
That's absolutely my pleasure. So yeah, I just sketch and I doodle all the time. I always carry a sketchbook with me, and even if it can be anything. If you're standing in a line in the grocery store, instead of whipping out your phone, just whip out a sketchbook and just do drawings of whatever is in your shopping cart, or the people in front of you who are pushing carts, and just gesture drawings. I mean, anything, just anything. Or you might be thinking about, I might be thinking about Nick at home, and so I'll start doodling little, what I imagine Nick is doing at home, which is probably not something that would worry me deeply.
Right. Yeah.
Unless he's sleeping. So, anyway, it's fun to draw. It's just, yeah.
Which actually leads us to a question from our youngest viewer. 4-year-old Matt would like to know, what is your favorite thing to paint?
Well, I would say at the moment, cats. Yes, I really love drawing cats. I've always loved drawing cats. In fact, when I was little, I wanted to be a cat when I grew up. But that didn't work out, obviously. So drawing them is the next best thing. So yeah. Well, I
And
wonder.
again, stay tuned for Barbara's newest book, which I believe will probably have the illustrations for the illustration show in November would be my hope.
Well, that's going to be interesting because there was a lot of digital work done, so it'll be interesting. There are
Right.
original components to it. So this is it. The Three Little Kittens coming out. Its book birthday is on the 21st. So next
the 21st, say, of which month?
April. So I'm excited.
They were almost there.
Yeah.
It's extremely exciting. Oh my goodness. Well, so 4-year-old Matt, cats. Try some cats.
I'm curious. Yeah. What does Matt like to draw?
That's a very good question. I do not know if his parents are watching this, but what I was mentioning to people during the email is that while this video is certainly live and we wanted to do that to have that interactive aspect to it, what we'll do is we'll end up saving the video on our Facebook so that those who are not able to join us can watch it and see the answers to their questions.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep on going because I know we have you until 3 and I'll try my best to do that.
Could I just say
Yeah.
to everybody out there? So all of us are finding ways to cope with, this whole being under quarantine and just, there's a lot of uncertainty and we can't see our friends and that's really frustrating. And, it's just our life is very different right now. So I woke up in the middle of the night just thinking, oh, I feel so kind of lost right now. I mean, what is going on? And I don't feel connected to anybody. So I started sketching. So another really wonderful thing about drawing is that you get to doodle in the middle of the night if you want to. So I'm going to move this down. So I think it'll be a little more clear. Is that more clear? Can you see that a little better?
We can see that perfectly. And this answers one of our live questions from Deb, who wants to know if there's anything you would share with kids right now who are frightened during this virus.
Yes. Well, this happened like at 3 a.m. I woke up and I was really frightened myself, I have to admit. And so I thought, well, I just, here is, so my the love of my life, David Johnson, and I in our house, and we're feeling, reclusive. So here I am as the hermit, and here he is as the himmet. And we're both, on computers. He's an artist also, and drawing pictures. And I thought, okay, so here I am, and we have our cats. But what's happening outside of, who are the people outside of the house who I can connect to? And I thought about my son, who is right here, and my mom and my sister. Hi, Mom. Hi, Kathleen, if you're listening. And and that I was still connected with them. And by just drawing a little picture of them, that kind of also helped me feel like they're here with me. And then I started thinking about friends and other family members, people in my neighborhood who I might see if I'm out for a walk, but not necessarily now often. And just people who are involved, other illustrators that I know, people who are connected through work, through life, through things that I love to do. As you can see, I still have room to fill up this whole page. So I keep.
Oh, is that us right there? Do I see Michelson? I do. Our Michelson. There we are. Oh, that's me.
There you are. You and
it
Paul
looks just like me.
And Jennifer, yes, you're all there. So the nice thing is that this is by my bedside on my bedside table, and I can wake up in the middle of the night, and if I'm feeling scared, I just think about somebody else I know, and I have this safety network of people I love who love me, and I know that they're all out there too right now, and so this helps me realize that there's a net, there's a safety net of love, and there's
comfort.
all connected together. So that's one way of kind of addressing that issue of, this is kind of a crazy time, and how do we
It is a
stop
nutty time, and it is so important to remember and practice gratitude for these connections that we have, which is again why I'm so grateful that you were kind enough to join us and be our very first participant on One-on-One Live at 2. Again, the reason we're doing this, in case you joined us and weren't here for the beginning, is we really wanted to contribute to a sense of connection with one another while we are all separated. Now, what I have a few more questions for Barbara, but since we were nearing the end of our time together today, what I would do is I would call a last call on any questions that you may have that Barbara did not get to. Just feel free to write those in the comments and we'll try to squeeze them in. So our next question, Barbara, is from Carol, and she was wondering, do you have a dream book that you would want to illustrate?
Yes, I think I have, in some of those sketchbooks that I showed you, I have some ideas of things that I would like to do. So my dream book are things that I'm working on, ideas that are kind of like floating around and coming together in my head. And the beauty of being an author and an illustrator is that the books that I do are my dream books. I'm drawing the book that I want to read. And so a dream book might be things, certainly cats are probably going to be involved in any dream project that I have, but I have got various ideas of things that I would like to do and work on, and characters I'd like to develop. So I don't know if it's not as specific. I can't.
That's okay. We'll take it.
Okay.
We will take it. And then Susan's question was there a particular book from your childhood that had a big impact on you? And if so, what was that book?
The Little Bear stories, illustrated by Maurice Sendak. I loved those stories. There was something so comforting about them, and just the common sense of them was also very, very appealing. And Maurice's illustrations were just incredible. He got into those characters, he defined them, and they were beautifully drawn, but there was such love in them. And that's, that was the genius of Maurice, really, that he could pull every single line was so full of life and expression. It was pathos to joy. I mean, and everything in between. I mean, he was really remarkable. So that book, the Little Bear, that was like my number one. I loved it. And Top Cat. Top Cat comics. Have
you ever thought about doing a comic book?
Yes, I have thought of that. And I don't know if you know or not, but in 2000, I contributed illustrations to Francois Mouly and Art Spiegelman's Little Lit series. So I did, there were 3 of those published larger format comics, and we're going to go over this. I think I have, let's see, here we go. So they were this size, and there were people, William Joyce, Lemony Snicket, Neil Gaiman, were asked to contribute stories and to draw pictures and to draw comics in these. So I actually have done some comics. Let's see where the one here. This was it was a dark and silly night. What is different in these pictures? So you have to there's a lot of detail in these. So
how much fun.
In this. So, but I also did actual 2-page comic strips that appeared in this collection. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. And I would love to do like a comic book, a graphic novel.
A graphic novel of some sort.
So, and Three Little Kittens is getting me a little closer to there because we have in this book, I have utilized word balloons. So here we are. This is kind of like the gateway to.
It's tiptoeing in.
Yeah, it's definitely tiptoeing in.
Yes.
So all of that is like I'm getting warm. I'm getting closer and closer.
Yes.
But I would love to go back to my earliest interest and what I loved to do the most when I was a small child, which is to draw comic books. So I have some ideas for that, and
so we should stay tuned.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, Barbara, I'm going to segue to our very last question.
Okay.
And this one comes from yours truly.
Okay.
And this is to be directed both young and old to all of our viewers. There is obvious advice that you would give somebody who is just starting out. You would say, practice your craft every day, enjoy what you do, draw. Is there something that you wish you knew before entering the world of children's illustration, or is there some other piece of advice that you would give to someone who is just starting out?
I would say value yourself and just brace yourself for lots of rejection, because that is just part and parcel of the whole thing, and be open to new opportunities and chance. So if you encounter something, be open to it, give it a try, see, if you can be open to suggestions. If you talk to, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, has wonderful, wonderful programs for people who are starting out writing and illustrating picture books. So I would definitely look up their website, scbwi.com, and they have lots and lots of advice and encouragement for people. So that wasn't available when I was starting out, and I wish it had been. I think the support and some of the information, I wouldn't have felt so alone. And that's the thing, you're not alone, even though, when you're writing and illustrating. So when I was in college, I also played the violin, and I kind of thought that I might have a career in music. And it was really kind of one thing or the other. Was it art? Was it music? And I had been drawing for longer than I'd been playing music. And I also felt that drawing, I was originating all of my own material. I wasn't composing music. I was simply playing classical music on my violin. So I thought, but the difference from being a violinist, and I wasn't that great a violinist, so I might have gotten a gig at a small orchestra somewhere. But the difference is, even though when you play a musical instrument, you have to practice on your own a lot. You're still, there's a human element, there's a combination, you're working in a group. If you're playing in a quartet or in some kind of ensemble, it's community. You're sitting with other people in the room, and you're practicing. You have a teacher who's really working one-on-one with you. So as opposed to writing and illustrating, and I thought very seriously about the fact that if I was going to become an author or an illustrator, it would mean that I would have to be alone for 10, 12 hours at a stretch for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, because that's the only way you can really complete your work, unless you're lucky enough to have a studio with other illustrators. But generally, most of us work alone. So I think you really have to consider that fact that is your temperament going to be suited for all of that alone time? Right.
Well, then, thank you so much, Barbara, for answering the questions.
And so this is
upside down, flip.
Oh, it's upside down. Typical of me. I always find my own odd way to do things.
What a wonderful creation, Barbara. Thank you for doing that. You are our first official one-on-one live at 2. And just to let everyone know, this drawing, as soon as this broadcast is over, this drawing will be available. If you are interested, please do email rm@rmichelson.com. That is rm@rmichelson.com. And again, a portion of those proceeds will go to benefit the Sendak Foundation and the New York Foundation for the Arts. And it will go to the fund that they've created to help all other illustrators and authors who are struggling right now and have been negatively impacted by this virus. So please do go ahead and get those emails over to Rich. Unfortunately, it is going to be sort of a first come, first serve. So I recommend when this is over, just pop on that computer and email Rich. And certainly if you have other questions, anything at all. And please do head over to our website to check out all of Barbara's original artwork from all of the books mentioned, and frankly, so many more that we just didn't have time to get to. But Barbara, thank you for joining us. Would you be open to doing this again sometime?
Sure, absolutely.
Then I guess we'll get to those other books next time, huh? And the rest of the questions.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Barbara, thank you for joining us. I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay well. Same with all of our viewers. Thank you all for joining us and taking the time. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode in this series. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thanks, Alana.
And for letting us into the wonderful studio.
Okay. Have a great day. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.